Greetings, fellow YouTuber. My name is Tim, and this is 2020. Oh, stop it. Everybody else made that joke. I don't want to hear about it. Well, Happy New Year, fellow YouTuber. Here it is, the big 2-0. New decade, new beginnings, and a new start here on the vlog. We're going to try to do a little bit more this year as we go along on the YouTube channel. As a matter of fact, one of the things we're thinking about is live streaming. We'll get into a little bit more of that as we go along this year. But let's talk about last year. What happened at the end of last year? Of course, I released my solo album, Honor Among Thieves. Played a great show in Chicago, and I appreciate everybody who stopped by. But what did we do before that?
Same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
No, not exactly. Of course, we went record shopping. I stopped by an estate sale. It was the closing of the old Blue Village record store, now in Westmont. Hey Dave, call me about advertising. Competitive rates. Picked up some great stuff along the way. For example, alright, now if you were a record collector in 1978 and claimed you didn't have a copy of this album, either you didn't collect records or you're lying. This is Chuck Mangione's Feels So Good. This is a classic album. The title track on this was played to death on AM and FM radio. It was a #1 hit, but sadly the rest of the album was really overlooked, and it has some great music on here. Chuck Mangione is a great horn player, and if you can get past the title track, if you haven't heard it 4 bajillion times in the dentist's office by now, you really enjoy this album. It's pretty good. If you're an oldies rock and roll fan, and I mean oldies, I'm talking all the way back at the beginning, you may have a copy of this in your collection. If not, you should have. This is a made-for-TV box set of the greatest rock and roll hits. You've got hits by Jerry Lee Lewis, The Contours, Fats Domino, the Isley Brothers, some amazing tracks on here. I bought it simply for the historic value and the fact that some of these songs are just plain timeless. You've got to have something like this in your collection if you are a rock and roll fan. It's good to have music that go back to the roots of rock and roll. I strongly recommend this record. If you know anything about classic rock, all you have to do is look at the shape of this album and you know what it is. Traffic's The Low Spark of High-Heeled Boys. Recorded in 1971, an epic album in every way, shape, and form. This is Steve Winwood at the height of his powers with some amazing tracks on this album. Light Up or Leave Me Alone, Rock and Roll Stew, and of course the title track, The Low Spark of High-Heeled Boys. Just 11 minutes of bliss. You've got to have this album in your collection. Not to be confused with Freedom Rock.
Hey man, is that Freedom Rock? Yeah man, well turn it up man.
This is a compilation that was released in 1975 by RCA Records. You probably saw the commercials for it on TV. Some great classic rock stuff that's on here from The Who, Jefferson Airplane, Linda Ronstadt, Coven, yes, One Tin Soldier is on here. It's a 2-record set, but again, do not confuse it with Freedom Rock.
Well turn it up man.
Always did hate that guy.
Cause it's a jungle out there. I see, now I'm on the street. Cause this is a dangerous game. When the summer is all so fair.
Now, this is an album that I should have had in my collection a lot earlier, but I really have never found it until now. This is Wings Over America, Paul McCartney and Wings, released in 1976. This album's got a lot of sentimental value to me because I remember playing this around my house almost constantly. This was a triple disc set of Paul McCartney live right after he'd released Band on the Run. Some great stuff on here, but the reason that I love this album most of all is there's two recordings on here that are really of interest. One of them is the late Denny Laine singing Go Now live, the song that he used to play with the Moody Blues. And also at the same time, you've got Paul singing Simon and Garfunkel's Richard Cory. And yes, all the hits are on here from Venus and Mars and Band on the Run. If you like McCartney live, you need this album. Again, if you're a classic rock fan, you need this album in your collection. Kansas, Left Overture. An amazing album. Side 1 alone justifies you wanting this in your collection. Carry On Wayward Son, The Wall, Miracles Out of Nowhere, What's on My Mind. You know these songs, you love them, you need them in your collection. Finally, there's one from the Guilty Pleasures department. If you're a fan, you know that I'm from Chicago. And one thing I have always been a fan of is Chicago radio. And one of the greatest radio stations that ever came out of the history of this city was The Loop. Where Chicago rocks. In 1980, The Loop decided to jump on the bandwagon of other stations that had made albums of local talent in the city, and they released Chicago Rocks Volume 1. Now, there's some great bands that are on here. If you're from the city of Chicago, you've got bands like The Shades, M&R Rush, Amy Hart, Glow, The Buzzards, just some great bands that were on this album. In fact, if you were a member of one of the bands that was on this album, please drop me a line in the comments section below. I'd love to hear from you and find out what the process was that went into getting on this album and the recording for it. It's something that's really fascinating to me, and I'd love to know a little bit more about it. Well, that's going to do it from here for now, fellow YouTuber. Again, thank you so much for your patience and your support with the shows, the albums, the vlog. 2020 is going to be a great year, and I promise to take you along with me, and we're going to have some fun together. Until then, if you like it, hey, as always, you know what to do. We'll see you next time. Now, this next album came from a guy that we... How'd that get in there?